got everything. And um, Dr. Lamb, I saw that you had joined us. So at any point, you you interject whatever you feel like you need to interject as we're moving through this evening's presentation.
I'm good. I don't have anything better to do. I thought I'd listen for a while. I don't have anything for tonight.
Well, that's okay. Well, we're going to introduce task 4, which is the action plan, and that's why I put what I did on the information I sent out to you and Dr. Revis. That if you're with us during that time, if we miss anything or if there's something you think about, just interject at any point.
I'll just be listening. I did want to come on tonight and begin to remind everybody that we will not be meeting Thursday night.
Right.
Remind them again that we've done 4 weeks in a row. We're going to give them, 1 or 2 or 3 weeks off, some amount.
Yeah, we won't come back on until our town hall for the APTEL.
Right. So remind them, but that doesn't mean because I'm not coming on for them to quit working.
No. And we were going to talk about that tonight as well. So I'm glad that you have introduced it, because they'll hear it again, because some of the others will be coming in.
Yeah, we're not coming on so you can take the time off. We're just going to stop coming on for a little bit so that you can catch up and not have something else to do. So
well, I want to welcome them first, and then I'll get on my soapbox, and then I'll get off my soapbox.
All right, I'll let you go.
Okay, but welcome to our weekly Zoom class. This is week 5, and as I said last week, is quickly moving along. These 16 weeks are quickly moving along, but I think those of you that if you've reflected at all, I think you can look today and you can look back over the last 5 weeks, and I think you can honestly say that you've covered a lot of territory and you've learned a lot already. You have to have said that. And it's evidence in a lot of the work that we've done. I want us to look at, first of all, let's look at week 5, and this is just to remind you of what this week consists of. As you look at the topics, it's the leader is coached, and the leader being the principal of the school, supporting the attributes of the different types of leadership. And you're reading this week specifically focused on transformational and situational leadership. And we're not going to elaborate a lot on that. Those will be more enhanced in 603 and really in 605 when you get to those classes. But this is a good introduction to that type leadership. But I said all that to say this. Dr. Revis's presentation is going to allude to a lot of the characteristics of the principal as the leader of the school and moving the school towards systemic school improvement, which is what you're doing with the APSL right now, and moving towards improving student achievement in your school. The resources that you read this week, the UBBN chapters, I reviewed all of those, and all of those are reflective of where you are and what you're doing with your work at this point. And these are some areas that you need to click on and make sure that you read those as well. The assignments that you see in this week, these are the things that will be due by Sunday of this week. Again, your task 3, APSL, which we're going to talk about, the revisions are going to be due to Dr. Revis and me for a final grade. But now we have to tell you in the review stages that it's ready for the APSL assignment Dropbox before you can put it there. And we're going to talk about that in just a second. The APSL task 3, the peer reviews are due to the assignment Dropbox. Well, why don't we just go ahead, Dr. Revis, while we're there, and just camp out right there. Task 3 revisions due to the instructor. Dr. Revis, you go ahead, comment on task 3 at this point as you see it.
Okay. Well, your first version, of course, was due Sunday evening, and I started this time. I went in and did a thorough review. I wrote margin notes on everyone's work And what I saw was that you're making some of the same mistakes, unfortunately, that you've made before. Now, Dr. Stedman and I told you at the beginning of this course, we don't want to make APA the big issue. But guys, unfortunately, you're making it a big issue because the majority of you still are not using correct APA citations or APA style references. And those are two things you've got to learn. I'm not going to do in margin notes anymore. If I tell you that you need to check your in-text citations, you need to go back and check every one of your in-text citations to make sure they are correct. It is the point in the course where you should be picking up on this. Again, I don't want to make that a big thing, but you've got to write it correctly. You've got to do it correctly.
And Dr. Revis, one of the things while you're talking about APA, another big issue is, and we told you that it changed this time, is the capitalization. You know, it's not like it used to be. And you know, we pointed out in task 1 and 2 a lot about capitalization. And I'll use this for example. We've always said that world history is capitalized. Algebra 1 is capitalized. No longer are they capitalized. Now, if it's referring like English would be capitalized or French would be capitalized, Spanish. But those you've got to go back and you've got to go, and what does APA say with the 7th edition with those things? Those are the things, again, too, along with what Dr. Revis said, we're in task 3, completed task 3 almost, and we're having to go back and say some of the same things that we said in task 1, and we shouldn't have to say that. Dr. Revis also, with your references, we told you everything is double spaced. It hasn't changed from the research that you did in task 1. So when we get to task 3 and we look at your reference and we're having to tell you what we told you in task 1 to fix, we shouldn't be having to do that now. So we need you to step up to the plate, and we need you to do what you're all master level students because you've already been through a program. So we expect to see that quality of work coming out of you. And when you wait to the last minute to do work, and we can go in and we can check, we know when you're in Blackboard, we know when you're doing things. It lets us know the time, the date, we can see all this stuff. So, you know, when you wait to the last minute, then you're not going to be able to give us quality work. Now, we know that life happens, and we know that, you know, we understand all that, but still, in line of that, you've got to still figure out when life happens, how am I going to still get all this fitted in? Because life can happen 1 week and you probably can fix it and catch up. But when life happens 2 weeks in a row, you're going to get so far behind that many times that's where students get frustrated and they drop out, or because they can't find a way of catching up. That's why you hear us pushing you all the time to make sure that you've got a good schedule and that you're following that schedule. Dr. Revis?
And the other thing that I would suggest, and I've suggested this before, is that you get somebody to proofread your papers, because if you don't, your mind will just read in the words and read right over mistakes, and it would just behoove you to do that. It will save you a lot of time and trouble. And I understand that some of you may not be writers. I was not a writer. My graduate and undergraduate degree is in mathematics. I never wrote from the time I was a junior in college until I got into my add-on certification program for administration. But there are models out there. Read other people's work. You've got to start writing at that graduate level. We should not be seeing incomplete sentences or run-on sentences or fragmented paragraphs. That, you know, your work has to flow and be graduate level work. So Dr. Stedman, you want to talk about the Writing Center support that we have?
Dr. Lamb, are you there? we'll come back to that. He is more aware of that than I am. And let's come back to that. I want him
Okay.
to address that when he comes back on. So just remind us of that.
And the last thing that I want to talk about, when your revision 3 or your first version, let's say, of task 3 was due Sunday night, Dr. Stedman and I start giving you feedback immediately. Dr. Stedman's much quicker than I, and he gets his back on Sunday evening. Sometimes I spill over into early Monday morning.
But I don't do what you did that you're not going
Well,
to do anymore. I don't go
right.
to the side and put the notes on it.
Right.
I'll tell them stuff, but I haven't done that.
Well, and that takes hours. That's why
Yeah.
I can't continue to do that. But once we give you that first revision, at least for my class, guys, take a couple of days and get it back into me, and I'll look at it again and adjust your grade if it calls for it. But we don't have time to do 2 and 3 and 4 revisions. You can count on about 1 good revision before, unless you're really struggling with it, before it's ready to be submitted for final evaluation. The pace of the class is just so fast. So
Right.
once we give you feedback, get that back to us quickly, and so you don't get behind and get bogged down either.
That is correct. And I want to say though, now, because if the shoe doesn't fit, you don't have to wear it. I received a lot of quality work the first time that it was excellent work. I said, move on to task 4. So, I just, and those of you that kudos to those that were able to do that and move on. I want everybody to strive to get at that place. Dr. Lamb, are you there now?
I am here.
Okay, would you talk to them briefly about the Writing Center at GWU for those that might need to reach out there for some assistance?
Okay. That's what I'm trying to do right now.
Okay, we can come back to that though. Just
No, I was going to talk about let me see. I'm trying to find the tab. The library has set up, but we have a writing center, but I'm trying to remember where she put these things. Natalie put these. Let me see if it's under the graduate. There's the graduate. They've moved these things around.
Can I do this, Dr. Lamb? If you find them, can we come back and then I can stop share so you can actually show them? Okay, let's do that so that they'll actually see it whenever that time comes.
All right.
Is that okay? Okay, and then I want to say one more thing about your work. Some of you are doing, extremely excellent jobs with your peer reviews. And remember, we said that this process is mainly to help you learn how to provide, good, solid, constructive feedback to your peers, which you will be doing to teachers one day. Some of you are doing superior, and I'm going to tell you, some of you are just minimally proficient. You're doing just enough by the skin of your teeth to get by, and and you see some of the work that's coming to you, so you see the quality versus what you're doing. If you're not doing the quality that you should be doing, I need you, and Dr. Revitt, we need you to step at to the plate, and we need you to take care of that yourself without us having to communicate with you personally about it. We're going to give you another opportunity to step up to the plate if that applies to you. And if you don't know if it applies to you, then you ask Dr. Revis and me, and we'll be glad to tell you, okay? We've been pretty lenient with that so far with our grading, but as we're closing out and moving into the APTEL in just a few weeks, I'm not going to be as lenient with my grading on that because you should have learned the process. One other thing, task 1 and 2 of the Zoom conference link, started getting some of those in. Just make sure that it's that what you do, that it's not always quantity, although we want you to spend enough time, but make sure that the time that you're together is quality time, and that you are addressing lessons learned from task 1 and 2 of the APSL, and and help each other out. And you can even look at, some of you have mentioned as you're moving into task 3, this should be a collegial time that you're collaborating with, how can you better do the rest of what you've got to do with the APSL, and it'll also help you as you're moving into the APTEL as well. Anything else, Dr. Revis, says before we move on?
Excuse me, I think we've preached enough.
Okay. And we only do this because we want you to do well, and we're really not mean people. And then we want you to look at week 6, just to get an idea of what you've got to plan for next week as well. You're going to turn in the APSL task 4 for us to review this week, and we're going to go over that tonight. And then next week, your APSL task 4 peer reviews will be due to the Dropbox, and we're hoping that by then, what I've preached about already, that you will have taken care of it when you get to task 4 with your peer reviews as well. And then task 5, you will not be doing peer reviews on that. You will not be sending it in for a review unless it's something that you want your coach to look at. When you submit it, you will be submitting it for an evaluation, and we'll talk about that next week as well. Okay, which brings us to today. Dr. Revis, we're going to go ahead and move into your topic of discussion. Do I need to stop share, or do I need to pull it up for you?
Why don't you just go ahead and pull it up if you don't mind?
Okay, I can do that. Okay.
I put together a brief PowerPoint and took a lot of this information out of your text, your oven text. Can you get it to where it would go on the slideshow? There we go.
It is, yep.
So what I wanted to do was just talk a little bit about the principal's role in the school improvement process. And as we go through the PowerPoint, I'm going to try to relate it to what you've been doing in your APSL work as well. So as you can see the quote on the next slide, I think it's a really good quote from Ubben. And it talks a little bit about schools can really make a difference for the achievement levels of students. And that, of course, has to be our priority. But a school is usually only as good or bad or as creative or sterile as the person who serves as the head of the school. And I can't emphasize that enough. There's a lot of research out there that shows a direct correlation between the effectiveness of that school principal and student performance or student achievement. And on the next slide, it talks a little bit more about principals, effective principals, and what they have to have a clear sense of purpose and priorities, and are able to enlist the support of others. Let's talk a little bit about that clear sense of purpose and priorities. When you become a principal, or even right now, think about someone who you hold in high esteem as a principal that you either had as a teacher or maybe even a student. I bet if you think a little bit, you're going to know and be able to determine what that principal's priorities were, because they talk about them over and over and over. Every opportunity that you get when you're a principal, you've got to be sharing with your staff what your priorities are. And you've got to be sharing that same list of priorities with your parent organizations and with all your coaches, everybody, because they have to hear it over and over and over again. This is our purpose. We're a learning institution, and these are our priorities, and this is how we're going to get there. But perhaps the hardest thing is that underlying fragment there, to enlist the support of others. You can have great ideas, a great sense of purpose, and priorities, a wonderful school improvement plan. But if you cannot enlist the support of others to help move that school forward, you're not going to go anywhere. And so you say, well, how do you do that? Well, as a principal, first and foremost, you've got to develop trust. They have to trust you, number one, that you're going to do what you say you're going to do, that you're genuine, and all those things we talked about a couple of weeks ago when we looked at that decision-making process. They've got to know that you're there, you're all in, and that you're there to move that school forward. And that you're there to make sure children learn. You know, we want to have strong student achievement. Yes, it's nice to have good test scores. We like to be able to say, look at our school and look at what we've done and our children have done. But more importantly, we need to be the best we can be for those students that we serve. And we need to be on our A game every day. And anyway, I've kind of got off track, but enlisting the support of others, you have to be passionate with your staff about being the best they can be, and have confidence in them. Show them you trust that, yes, if we do these things, I know we can get that student performance where it needs to be for our children, because we're in the life-changing business. We're not in the business of counting pennies. We're not in that business. We're in the life-changing business. And for a lot of the children that we teach more now than ever before, what they get in school, it could be their path out of poverty, better life that they need. So anyway, the support of others, it's tough. You've got to motivate, you've got to be passionate yourself, and you've got to be confident that this is the right track that we need to be on in order to reach those goals and to meet our priorities and to improve student learning. Okay, Dr. Stedman, next slide, my little sermonette. I'm not going to click on this link, but I wanted those of you in North Carolina to know that this is a document. It's called a planning guide, school improvement planning guide. And not only does it give you a great process, but it also gives you the legal requirements for school improvement process. It tells you the composition, the legal requirements for the composition of a school improvement team. It talks to you about what topics and what components must be included in your school improvement plan. It talks about the principal's role in that process. And as a school improvement team member, a principal is just a member. Now, you can be the facilitator, but you're a member. What you do is, what your big job is after the school improvement team and your staff have approved that school improvement plan, is you present it to your superintendent and your school board for approval. But anyway, that's a good document that you might want to glance at sometime when you're a little bored. And then on the next slide.
Dr. Revis, and South Carolina
Yes.
people, you need to look at that, because there is something in South Carolina that would be equivalent to what North Carolina has.
I think I've got the link on the next slide.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, I see it. Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine. I wanted to pull something from South Carolina as well. You also have a school improvement document, a very good document. And in fact, this graphic that you see on the screen comes from South Carolina. And I really like this process. It's a cyclic process, of course, and it's always continuous as far as our school improvement process. So I want to quickly go through each of these and kind of correlate that to the work you're doing in your APSL. So on the next slide, let's look at what that diagnose means. This is where you complete your comprehensive needs assessment. Excuse me. Now for you guys, for the APSL, the only thing that we had you look at was student performance and growth. But if you were doing a school-wide school improvement plan, you would also be gathering perceptual stakeholder data. And if you are accredited through Advanced Ed, you would do those surveys that they have, and you would look at that feedback from your stakeholders, called perceptual feedback, and then you would also pull in some environmental data. But again, the only thing you had to do for your APSL was look at that student performance and growth data. Then the next step would be on the next slide.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. You identify your 5 potential priorities and seek to understand the root causes. I want to underline a couple things here. We only ask you to note one priority or one area of need for your APSL tasks. In a school improvement plan, you still need to be very narrow in your focus. If I see a school improvement plan with 10 or 15 goals, I know one thing for sure. That is a plan that nobody can do and handle. 3 to 5 priorities. And then you seek here to understand the root causes. And it's in this step that you do your research, just like you did in task 3. You started researching the root causes of your priorities. You started researching potential strategies and programs to address those root causes. Then next, we have our school improvement plan. We build and set SMART goals for each priority, and you can read that acronym very quickly through there. Again, you need to be specific. If you're not specific and if it's not measurable, you're not going to know whether or not you have attained that goal. It gives you a sense of urgency if it's specific and measurable. In the next slide, I wanted to just show you, this is actually the action plan that you're going to do, that Dr. Stedman's going to introduce for you tonight in task 4. And you can see how you put that together. And we're not going to talk about that anymore right now, but you can see it's got a place for each one of those SMART acronyms. There's a place here for you to put in that information.
And thank you for putting that up there, Dr. Revis. And this is non-negotiable. When we get to this part of the action plan, what you see here is non-negotiable. We expect to see it just like it is with every one of these headings up there. And we're going to talk about it more. But this part right here, you must do.
And then you implement the plan. And in order to implement the plan, you first have to engage the stakeholders. Yes, your staff may have approved that school improvement plan, but it doesn't mean they bought into it. So how do you, as a school leader, engage those stakeholders? The second thing you need to do, and this is something we're not good at as educators, and that is to monitor the fidelity of implementation. Now that squarely lies on the shoulders of the administration to determine you can decide with teachers how to monitor it, but it's your job to monitor that and to give feedback on that. And it is also your job to provide the support systems necessary, professional development, literacy coaching, mentoring, whatever it takes to raise that level of implementation. One of the first things that teachers start wanting to do whenever you adopt a program or a set of practices, they start wanting to tweak it and modify it. Well, if it's a research-based program, that research is based on a certain set of implementation strategies. And if you decide to start deviating from that, you are not going to get the results that research study received. So it's important that you say to your staff, look guys, we may want to tweak this down the road, but for right now, for this year, let's implement this the way it's supposed to be. And you keep notes about things you would like to see changed or modified, and at the end of the year, we'll talk about it. But let's give it this 1 year and implement it with fidelity. And if you don't do that, guys, and you start changing every time somebody wants to tweak this or tweak that, you're not going to know if the program or the research-based strategy even worked. Okay? And of course, here's the monitoring and evaluating again. We evaluate interim assessments. We evaluate our summative data, and you have to design and see through, as an administrative team, your level of fidelity of implementation. That is so important. I cannot stress that enough. And then you sit down at the end after you've got your summative data back and you have the discussion. How are our students performing? Do we need to say the course or modify? Or what are our next steps? And then you can tweak or start revising. So that is a continuous process. It never stops. It keeps going. Dr. Lamb or Dr. Stedman, do you have anything to add to that?
I don't, because that's going to lead directly into what we're going to be talking about, tonight with task 4. So that was a good lead in. Thank you for sharing that. Let me pull up my board document.
While you're transitioning, we've got a question on the chat box.
Go ahead.
Is a school improvement plan to be available to staff in a building? The answer is definitely yes. Every staff member should have voted on that school improvement plan, at least in North Carolina. And in North Carolina, you're required to post that publicly on your website as well.
Okay. And that is right. Dr. Evison, if there's questions as we're going along, you can determine whether we need to address them along the way or not. Just want to point out before we get into task 4, it is very, very important. I had several students, for some reason, that you submitted on Sunday night, but you only submitted prompt 1. Remember, you must submit. If it has 2 prompts, you have to submit everything. Send it back, because we have to look at the whole picture there. So please make sure that you look to see that if there are 1 or if there are 2 prompts to whatever task that you're working on. Let's move on into task 4. And this is the template. And we've asked you again, please do not deviate from the template. The template has been formatted, and it's designed just as it should appear in the work that you do. Task 4, you, the candidate, you're going to lead your PLC in the research and development of an action plan proposal that you're going to present to your administration. Okay, what does this consist of? In narrative form, you're going to lead your PLC in the development of an action plan, and your focus is going to be on your role as a leader with references to the degree of collaboration, shared governance, and delegated responsibilities. The action plan is a concise and informative presentation that graphically highlights the research, data analysis, and expected outcomes, and is to be presented to the school's administrative team. Now, what you've done, remember, let's go back to task 1. Remember, you talked about what should a good PLC look like. You set your norms, you got your committee together, you did all that stuff. When you got to task 2, remember you did some research. You pulled data. What data were you going to use as you begin looking at whatever the major problem was in your school? You collaborated with your team. You came to a conclusion that after looking at all of this stuff, this is what we decided was the most pressing need for our school. Or you presented it to your administration, and your administration said, while you have identified this as your most pressing need, this is what I want your focus to be on. So, but you've come up with an identified need. And when you went to task 3, remember, you know what the need is. In task 3, you begin looking at what research is out there on the best practices as it relates to my identified need in task 2. And then what are some sources and resources that are out there? And we said that there need to be all kinds of resources, and we specifically said online resources, and we said to identify as much as possible some programs that are research-based that possibly you could use as well to help with your identified problem. And much of the work that has come in has really been good research, evidence-based work that we saw in what you've done. Even if you had to go back and fix some stuff, we both, Dr. Revis and I both saw some good stuff in what you turned in, even though there's still work to be done with it. Now, as we move to task 4, you've done this research, you've identified these resources or whatever. Now, this is really where the rubber meets the road. Your job is to take everything that you've done up to this point, and you're to put it into a workable plan, that will hopefully, with the blessings of your administration and with the collaboration of the school, is a plan that you can actually present and you can actually implement in your school to help with that identified most pressing need. Now, you see right here that there are, what you're going to do in prompt 1, there's 2 prompts. In prompt 1, you're going to lead the PLC in the research and development of an action plan that's going to strategically address the most pressing need that must include but not limited to all of these areas right here. Now, I'm not going to go over these now because I'm going to come to another document that's going to better explain this. But these, if you see, again, we said if it's in yellow, what are you supposed to do with it? That means you got to write something. So this is going to be, each one of these are going to be your topics, and Dr. Revis has already alluded to a lot of this, and I'm going to bring up the helpful hints document that's aligned with this to help better explain this. But every one of these are your topics, these are your headings, and under each of these, you're going to write something. Then, and again, I'm coming back to this. I want you to look at, okay, now in red, that means these are some things suggesting that you're to do. Your action plan summary must be displayed in the graphic organizer shown below and may additionally be displayed in a PERT chart. Dr. Lamb talked about that earlier, but the PERT chart is a bonus if you decide to do that. But everything that you've written about up there, you're going to put it in this organizer right here. And again, I'm going to come specifically and we're going to address each one of these areas right here. But when you see specific activity, timeline, persons responsible, resources needed, formative assessment method, summative goal, every one of these should be addressed, must be addressed just as you see it. These are lines right here because you must have several specific activities. You can add to this, the timeline for those activities, all of this. We should see this organizer just as we see it right here. And again, we're going to come back to that in just a moment. Again, this is an example of a PERT chart if you choose to do that. I'm not going to go into that. You can look at it, and if you decide you want to do one, then that's just a plus for you, and we'll consider that as well in your final grade. Then there's a prompt 2, and we're going to talk about this in more detail, but I want you just point out that your template tells you that there are 2 prompts, and you've got to, once you get that action plan completed, you've got to present it to your administrative team. And these are some areas that you're going to address as you are presenting to your administrative team. You're going to present the plan, and as you're presenting, you're going to share the action plan with your administration. And then the discussion should include, but is not limited to, these following topics. And we're going to talk about these specifically. Building efficacy. What is that? Strategies for sustained growth. What is that? Issues concerning diversity. What is that? Resources needed, and establishing a shared vision of learning. With that being said, I'm going to pull up, let me see, let me find the APSL helpful hints document. And then I want to come to task 4, because this is going to specifically lay out and help you better it's going to provide verbiage to help you better understand what you've got to do in each of these areas. Okay, again, and Dr. Revis, at any point, you interject what you need to interject, and Dr. Lamb, if you see that we're missing something and you think about it, you interject as well. Okay, in task 1, your heading is, again, the importance of the action plan research base. And what you're going to do is, in narrative form, your narrative work will address the purpose of the action plan based on what the research says. What does the research say? Why should you have an action plan? What does research say about action plans? According to blah, 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 an action plan is important because, again, we don't want your opinion. We want to know what does the research say. And if you go to the APSL helpful hints the APTL template and materials section in Blackboard, you will find some resources there. One of them is with Dr. Willard Daggett, and you will find that he's a guru in his area. But you'll find two helpful documents there that will help you understand more about. Well, one of them is the Daggett System for Effective Instruction, where research and best practices meet. And then another one is Successful Schools from Research to Action Plans. I would tell you, go to those documents. It's okay to cite, if every one of you cite Daggett in your research or whatever, that's okay. He's one of the best. Now there's others out there, but these are some helpful things that we have provided for you to help you get started. So they are in Blackboard under the APSL template and materials section. There are two documents in there, and there's some other things in there too. But just know that there's some helpful hints there. Dr. Revis, anything you want to say?
Yeah, and just don't forget your textbook as a resource as well.
Oh, yes, a lot of good stuff, yes. Okay, the second thing, we're still under prompt 1. Your heading is alignment. Now remember, this is your action plan. Alignment. How are you aligning all this with student learning outcomes? What you're doing here in narrative form, your action plan must, and you're talking about this in narrative, it must align itself completely with student learning outcomes as measured by test scores, your summative assessments. In other words, you are to narratively explain that alignment in this section. In other words, your ultimate goal is you want, is student improvement, improve student achievement. How is all of this with what you're doing, with your plan? How is this aligned with getting the outcomes that you want to get in the end with improved student learning? Dr. Revis, any comments there?
No, we're good there.
Okay. Your next heading is short-term, mid-term, and long-term goals. Notice how many goals? Short-term goals, mid-term goals, and long-term goals. You must clearly define all goals and objectives for the action plan. When you set up this action plan, what can I do now towards making, improvements with overall student achievement in my identified area? What are some things that I can't do it right now, but I probably can do it maybe before the school year's over with? Those would be your midterm goals, or it's something that they're obtainable in the very near future. You have to determine when that is. And then your long-term goals is something that I know this will work. And this could go back to some of those programs that we talked about. Now, programs don't fix everything, but they can assist with helping with the problem. So we don't want you to say, well, if I had this program, it would solve all the world's problems. It will help with problems, but it's not going to solve your problems. But we know that programs many times cost money, and money is something that you have to wait on sometime. But if you had the money and you could afford to get a program, that may be a long-term goal that, and you present the evidence to your principal and say, is this something we could work towards? It could be, you have to determine what it is that you can't do now, but you think if we could do this, that this would make a difference. I would clearly delineate in my narrative work, these are my short-term goals. These are my midterm goals, and these are my long-term goals. You write them out narratively, and then you're going to take this same information and you're going to put it into your action plan graphic organizer later on that we're going to talk about. Dr. Revis, anything?
We have a question on the screen. Is it okay if we don't implement everything we researched in part 3? After talking to my PLC today, some of the things we researched may not fit into our plan.
With that the whole purpose was for them to see what was out there, and then to it's kind of like a funnel. You've got the big part at the top. Now you come down, and the bottom part of it, you're going to narrow it down to actually what it is that you can and cannot use and do. So no, the research was to show you what's out there, and you pull from that research what is valid for your action plan. That was a good question, though. Does that kind of cover that, Dr. Revis, you think?
I think so. Thank you.
Can I chime in on that one?
Sure, yes.
I get this from in every class, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You have no control over whether your action plan is going to be implemented.
Right.
We're interested in you learning the process. When you go through this and you say, this is something that looks like that we could do, and if your administration says, well, it does look good, but we can't do that, we don't hold that against you.
Exactly.
It was the process rather than the product that mattered. You now know how to go about doing a Closing the Gap program, which you'll be required to do once you become a school administrator. And so don't pick something that's $1 million knowing. Try to find something that there would be a cost benefit analysis that would be, yeah, we could, that might be something relevant that you could do that is attainable. Now, even then, you do your presentation to your school leadership team, they still may say, it sounds good, but we can't do it, or we don't have the resources or money, or we really, if that's beyond your control. But now, the process is within your control. But don't pick something that's $10 million knowing that they're not going to do it.
Right.
That's not realistic. I mean, we're looking for you to, for real solutions that have a chance of being implemented. And if they aren't, that's how it goes sometimes.
Well, and the thing is, we hope that what you do present is so eye-opening to your administration that they're going to want to do it. And again, please be reminded that this is really your first opportunity to begin marketing yourself as a future assistant principal. How you present and what you present this right here is a beginning marketing tool for you. Wouldn't you say so, Dr. Revis?
Oh, definitely.
Okay. Your next heading is, you've done your goals. Your next heading is your specific activities aligned with the designated goals and objectives. Now, you've identified your short-term, your midterm, and your long-term goals. Now, you're going to identify activities, and you're going to align them with those short-term, midterm, long-term goals and objectives for your action plan. In other words, you've said, these are some things I want to do. Now, how are you going to, how are you going to do all that? What are you going to put in place? It could be, one of your short-term activities could be a planned curriculum night, or it could be
your professional development.
Your professional development, yes. It is any of those things. This is where you talk about, you talk about those things here. your specific activities. Nothing's general here. These are your specific activities that's aligned with your short-term, midterm, and long-term goals. And then finally, your heading is indicators of success with measurement techniques. In other words, you've put all this stuff together. You said, I want to do this, and this is how I'm going to do it. How do you know that you have successfully reached your short-term goals, your midterm goals, and your long-term goals and objectives for your action plan? What have you put in place that's going to let you know at the end of the day, wow, we have accomplished what we wanted to accomplish, or we haven't accomplished, and this is why? What procedures have you put in place? Now, you know, one of the things you can look at is, you know, with your summative assessments is that, you know, you can always look at the end of grade or end of course test scores, but that shouldn't be the only thing that you're looking at. You know, what other things are, what measure, and along the way, what are your benchmarks along the way that you're gauging? Because, you know, if you just do it now and then you wait till the end, you know, how do you know what's going on in the middle of the game? You know, and I know all of you do benchmark testings at your schools and whatever. If you're doing that, then don't reinvent the wheel. Those are some things that you can still do. Dr. Revis, any comments on that?
Right, and don't forget things like your state NC check-ins and those kinds of things.
Right. Okay, your heading is clarification of roles and responsibilities, okay? Who has been assigned to do what, and what have they been assigned to do, and name the people involved. It doesn't mean that you have to say, well, Kathy Revis is going to do this, or Dale Lamb's going to do this, or Danny Stebbins going to do this, but you identify the people involved. It could be, you know, when it comes to monitoring things for fidelity purposes that we'll talk about in just a second, it could be that you have been tagged as the person that's going to be monitoring something, but where is your principal or assistant principal involved in this? Because, you know, there's an old cliche that says what gets monitored gets done. You know, how much are they going to be involved in the monitoring process? It could be it could be grade level chairpersons that look at things on the grade level. It could be during other established PLC. You decide who has been assigned to do what are they going to do, and then you tell us who they are. And then your heading is formative and summative assessment criteria. Please be reminded, formative assessments are used to determine if programs are being implemented, as Dr. Revis said, with fidelity. How do you know the people assigned to do the what are actually doing what is supposed to be done? And is it being done timely and correctly? The formative assessment is dealing with grown people. It's dealing with adults. This is not dealing with our children. When you look at formative, when you decide formatively how are things being assessed, you are not looking at students, you are looking at grown people, adults. And the summative assessment is, you know, summative is at the end of something. And we know that that involves our students and, you know, the outcomes of things. And we know for us that an example is our end of grade testing or our end of course testing on that. I will tell you in the absolute example that we have provided you in Blackboard, it's a good example, but remember, we never told you that it was that was accomplished work. We said it was a good model to follow, but there's stuff in there that needs to be much stronger. As I said earlier, some of it may have gotten by the skin of its teeth, but it's a model to follow. So I don't want you to look at that and say, you know, this is the perfect model. You decide based on the rubric requirements, you know, what it takes to have an accomplished document. You decide what works for you and what should be done. Now, Once each of these 7 topics have been narratively addressed, you've written about all of them, you're going to take that same information, all 7 of those areas, and you're going to put them into that graphic organizer that we've talked about, that Dr. Revis has shown you already with those headings. You're going to take each and you're going to put it in that graphic organizer. And remember, we said that the information told you that that was an either or. Some of you may have seen that, but there's no choice. You must use that graphic organizer, and the PERT chart is optional. Okay. And then we go to prompt 2. Now, all of that you've created, that action plan that you've created, you're going to share your action plan with the principal leadership team to discuss possible implementation. Now, remember, Dr. Lamb just told you, you're going to present it, and you hope that they're going to love it, and it's going to be the best thing since sliced bread, and they're going to say, wow, we can't wait to get this started. But they may not. We don't want you to be disheartened if that becomes the case. You will have done your job. This could be videoed, and we recommend that you get a video of this, but it's not required. It becomes a great artifact for your competency folio if you can get this video. But however, there must be clear evidence of the meeting, and if not a video, then have someone to take a picture of you presenting, and you'll need an agenda and a sign-in sheet for those present with who they are. Now, the discussion that you're going to have with your administrative team and whoever else they decide is going to be there is to be guided by the following topics that we're going to talk about below. You will have researched and prepared responses to prior to this meeting for your presentation. I would highly recommend that you do, you know, at least a PowerPoint presentation, have something just very concrete that you can provide them, a visual that you can provide them with all the information that you think is important as you are presenting, making this presentation. And remember, the PowerPoint actually, the slides itself should be, if you do that, should be put in your work. It can be placed in your appendices as an artifact, you know, showing that you have actually presented to your administration and what you presented. Okay, in prompt 2, the first heading is, and it says your heading is building efficacy. Well, what is efficacy? You know, efficacy is the feel-good stuff. You know, how do you a highly efficacious person is one that that, you know, they love what they do. They feel good about it. They can't wait to get up every day. They wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, like Dale Lamb does, and they can't wait to get dressed and ready to go to school because they love their job so much. You know, everything is just good about school. They love working in that classroom. They love working with their administration. They love leading. They love being, you know, the leader of PLCs and, you know, all this. So what does the research say? Not your opinion, but what does the research say about, as a principle, building efficacy, a strong sense of efficacy in the school? What does it do for improving student achievement? Now, there's lots of good, solid research out there on building efficacy. Dr. Revis, anything that you would like to say more about the efficacy component? You're going to address this more in the APTEL, but this is an introduction to efficacy now.
Mm-hmm.
Anything?
Well, I just want to draw your attention to the first and second heading here in prompt 2. It's about what the research says. So when you hear the word research, that should say to you, okay, I've got to go to Dover Library. I've got to do a little research. Okay. Someone asked me on the research on task 3, you just Google my sources? You need to stay in the Dover Library. You need to have resources that are scholarly resources here. Exactly. and if you've not been in Dover Library, I mean, there are more things to choose from than you can imagine. Some are full text, some are journal articles. Just go in and search in that one Bulldog search, I believe it's called, or something like that, and just search building efficacy in teachers or staff, and you'll get more things than you could deal with.
Okay. Okay, the next area that you need to be prepared to discuss with your administration is strategies for sustained growth. In other words, when you do something, what are the strategies in place to know that it's going to be perpetual, that what we're doing is going to continue to work and continue to move the pendulum in the right direction? What does the research say about moving forward in the quest for improving student achievement and moving in, as I said, in the right direction? Then number 3, your heading is issues concerning diversity. You know, we have to always look at what are the potholes in the road? What are the things that could possibly hinder any success in moving in the right direction? We have to look at everything. In other words, what are the issues as we're moving? You know, we have to look at our exceptional children's population. How is that going to impact or what we're trying to do, or will it at all? Our ESL population, our migrant education population, and the list goes on. Any issue, anything dealing with diversity, anything that's different from the norm, how is it you identify those issues of diversity, you include them in your narrative work and in your presentation. You talk about that, you know, you say, these are some things that you talk about it with your PLC. This includes any issues that could hinder the growth process. They must be addressed in your action plan, and you're going to discuss this with your PLC team first, and then you're going to share it candidly with your principal and your leadership team, because they're going to be able to hopefully address with you how you can move around those areas that could possibly hinder. And then your heading is resources. What will be needed to accomplish the goals and objectives for your action plan? This includes what people do you need? If it requires fiscal resources, money, how much money, where you gonna get it from? All of those issues must be addressed under resources. And then your heading is establishing a shared vision of learning. What are the plans? Your job as a leader is to try to get everybody on board, everybody on the same boat and moving in the right direction. We know how difficult that can be because there are naysayers. What are your plans for trying to get everybody on board and moving them in the direction? As a leader, what do you recommend that we do to try to get everybody moving in the right direction? And then with all of this, you're going to have a reference section because you will have done research, and then your appendices will include, at a minimum, these things. Just make sure that when you submit your work to us, that you submit task 1 and task 2 at the same time. Make sure you use your template and you follow the example provided. Do not deviate from that. Dr. Lamb, any comments on anything before we move on at this point? It's already past time, but it's important that we cover this.
All right. Test scores are a function of skill and luck. Write that down. Skill and luck. Luck is luck. Skill has 2 functions. It has 2 parts: content knowledge and process knowledge. If you're going to sustain growth, your action plan has to speak to content knowledge. Let me explain that. Your closing the gap program can't be, we're going to teach kids to take the test better. We're going to learn how to manipulate the test. That's not sustainable. Those gains will regress back to the mean. If you want kids to do better on a math test consistently, you got to teach them more math. that's the skill part, content and process. So when you walk in front of your principal and your leadership team, if you've got, we're going to do this little test taking strategies, and that's going to change the outcomes in our school, they'll make you wear a sign and a helmet. They'll think you're that dumb. You can't focus on things like just manipulating the test itself. What you're bringing them in an action plan has to address improved teaching and learning in a content area, math, reading, whatever it is. That's why we put that part in there about sustained growth. That eliminates the little study guide things and the little test prep materials and all those little tricky things. That's not what we're talking about here, folks. We're talking about a sustained effort of quality instruction, improving instruction, programs, treatment. We're talking about moving your school, not just we'll teach them to guess better, eliminate two choices and guess between the other two kind of thing. That doesn't last, folks. That's borne out in statistics. So remember, whatever you pick should not be some gimmicky, we'll teach them how to take the test better. This is about instruction, student learning, learning more math, learning more English, learning more social studies, learning more science. This is about learning more, doing a better job teaching in the teaching and learning function. That's what this is about, not teaching them how to manipulate the test better. So make sure you focus on that. Now, I'm going to share my screen. In your class shell at the bottom, come on, you can do it. All right, this is on the course overview page of your class shell. Down at the bottom, there's a Dover Library link, everything APA. It covers everything that they covered tonight that they talked about that you need to make sure that you remember. It's got the style guides. It has a slideshow. It's got links. It's got document formatting. It's about how to cite references. How do I cite all these different things here? It's all here. Now, also right next to that, if you will click on support services, spring 2020, and go down to academic support services, you'll click on that. That's where the Writing Center information is held. Click on academic support services. And here is the Writing Center. There's the people and there's their link, and there's that information. They normally work with people face to face. I've heard that they'll also Zoom with you. Now, don't hold me to that. Now, that's what was announced, that they will Zoom with you.
Some students they have Zoom with students in the past.
Yeah. So I said, don't. And I'm not telling you that I'll Zoom with you. They'll Zoom with you. But
Yeah.
now, that's my understanding. We've had students in the past that they have Zoom with. And so, and they're pretty good about getting to you pretty quickly. So if you click on their link right here, no, that's wrong. The Writing Center, if you click on that, this is their website. This is their they've got what hours they work. Now, the downside is they work during the day. But they do work some evenings. Monday through Thursday, they stay open until 8 o'clock in the evening. And so you just get in touch with them right here as an email, make an appointment to Zoom with them, and they'll help you. And you've also got all this information here from those last two boxes under course overview. This page right here just pretty much tells you everything you need. But if you need help, they'll Zoom with you. So make sure that you do that. All right. So as I said, I would make sure that we get to those again. Course overview, and down at the very bottom, you've got your link to the APA at the library. You've also got your support services. You've got that one as well that will take you, click on it, and then take and go down to academic support services, click on that one, and it will take you to where you can get to the library service, get to the writing center. That way right there. So that's how you get to those things that you need to help you.
Dr. Lamb,
Yes,
would you mind going up to the library link and just showing them how to do
that's where I was headed. Thank you, Doctor, for reminding me.
Okay.
Dr. All right, so just click on the library link and take you right to Bulldog One. Now, the question came along is, why can't we use Google? Google has not been vetted. There's not been refereed. It's not been professionally reviewed or peer reviewed or any of those kinds of things. Anybody can put anything on Google. I would say if you took your medical advice from Google, you'd be lucky to last the week. People just, there is no rules on Google. You can put anything you want on Google. What was it? Facebook and Google both said this week that they will not remove things that they know are false or misleading. That's not their job. People paid to put them there. And so, you can't trust Google. You can't trust Facebook or any. I know that a lot of you get your news and advice from Google and Facebook. I understand that, but not in this class. We do not use Google and Facebook. They are not legitimate sources for professional work. This Bulldog One search engine will only bring up things that are legitimate, truthful, accurate, peer-reviewed, the real deal stuff. They don't advertise. Companies can't go on here and pay to have their website put up the top. Look, everybody, this must be popular. This must work. It's kind of like, it must be true. I read it on the internet. No, that's not the way it works. You must use a refereed site. This is one. And so you got to use Bulldog One. But I know I went to school in a horse and buggy, but you don't understand. We used to have to go to the library to do an ERIC search. You couldn't even do it from home, much less online. There was no online. And then prior to that, you had to do it on microfiche. Do that. Now it's as easy as clicking on the library tab and typing in your subject. Like right now, we're going to do teacher EF.
And the microfiche, you can even see it sometimes. Yeah, that's right, Alan. Dr. Lamb and I both, that's how we did our research. Dr. Revis, I don't know if you did or not.
Oh, yes. I think that's what convinced me to be a math major.
And so here are articles on efficacy, and that's what we're looking. That's what we're looking for, is articles on teacher efficacy. And it's going to give you dimensions of self with teacher efficacy. I mean, these are all real. These are actual research studies. Its effects on classroom processes, student adjustment, teacher, and so you can do one on achievement. And so relationship between principals, instructional leadership behaviors, and teacher self-efficacy. And it has all these other things. Oh my. And so a lot of good stuff here. You want to, it's all in one place. And this is the real deal stuff. This stuff is good.
And I will tell you, as you're doing your research on efficacy, it all began with Albert Bandura. He is the father of efficacy.
Mm-hmm. You can put him into Bulldog One and get those things as well. And so I always think of efficacy as effective. If teachers think they're effective, they usually are. If they want to be, if they feel good, if they're motivated, they're excited, they're striving to be effective, usually they are. So self-efficacy is how good you feel about how well you're doing your job, not just, I've got a new hairdo, or this is a snappy pair of slacks I've got on today. Efficacy is how you feel good about how well you do your job.
Right.
And that's we have to make sure that we clarify that. Efficacy is not about how you feel about yourself as a person or your clothing, it's about how well you feel about you're doing your job, how happy you are and motivated in your job to be the best that you can be. So that's just kind of a little thing. I've got to go. I've got elsewhere to be.
We've got to let them go too. Dr. Revis, you bring the benediction, and we'll move on.
Well, as you probably see, this task 4, there is a lot of writing and some research, and you've got some heavy lifting to do this week. And so that's one of the reasons we are giving you Thursday off, so you have time to meet with your PLC and to build that presentation to your administrative team and to do your writing of your product. So if you need anything, just give us an email or a phone call away.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Lamb. Thank you, Dr. Revis. Good night, everybody.
Good night.